Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Headed into our final segment here, we are going to be talking some NBA. We are just on the brink of the All-Star break. So tonight is actually the final games before the break. There were 13 last night, so we're just going to sort of bounce around here with those last set of games before, again, a few more tonight, but as we sort of start to gear towards the All-Star break and getting into a lot of these conversations about where we are at this break point in terms of standings, in terms of rookies, in terms of contenders, all those different conversations we will be having over the next week. But starting with last night, the big game, in my opinion, was the Clippers versus the Warriors, where it went down to the final minute, and this was a very interesting game because the Warriors came in to this game on a winning streak. They were sort of maybe not rounding a corner, but they were figuring themselves out more. They had been really firing on offense, especially since Draymond Green has returned from his suspension, and they just looked like a lot better version of themselves. And last night, unfortunately, there was a little bit of something brewing. They were very much carried by their young guys in Brandon Pajemski and Jonathan Kuminga in the first half, which isn't all too concerning because that's, part of what they've been doing this year. They need these young guys to bring that energy. And, the smarts too. Like, Kuminga is more of the raw talent, and you can see sort of the step-by-step progression with him over time of correcting his mistakes, but he's still a little bit erratic and in a fun way. I've talked about him before where I think that it's so interesting the way that he was thrown into this Warriors team because he was a little bit more of a project player, but the ceiling was so clearly there, led to maybe him not getting a ton of minutes, is not as many as he would have liked to his first couple years. He was frustrated with Steve Kerr earlier this season about his lack of usage, and they sort of talked him into this new role, and he has been tremendous there. And again, mistakes still do happen with him, but at a much lower rate, and we see a lot more of the greatness coming from him instead. So, he only finishes last night with 13 points, but I think he had 10 at halftime. And the other one, Brandon Pajemski, he's been incredible. He is a smart player. He hit some big shots for them down the stretch as well. He leads the NBA in charges drawn. He is just a high IQ player that really seems to fit into this Warriors style of play. Now, obviously, then come the third quarter, where Steph Curry erupts. He scores, it was at least 13 points when he had reached the NBA record fourth consecutive game with 7 or more three-pointers that has never been done before in NBA history. He finishes with 41, but it was the fourth quarter where this Warriors team collapsed, as we've seen them do many times this year. Now, keep in mind, the Clippers are running this game without Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George had a pretty quiet first half, but he started to get himself going in the third quarter after a, again, slow start where James Harden was sort of initiating most of the offense for them. But the Warriors were up by 11 going into that fourth quarter. They let the Clippers back into the game, but even then, they have a lead with about 4 minutes left, and just the defensive lapses started to burn them. They were sending a lot of double teams at Paul George throughout the game, knowing that, there's no Kawhi Leonard to hurt you. Russell Westbrook got a lot of minutes, and it was very interesting to see the way that teams have been playing him lately, but pretty much doubling off of him and, sending two at the ball handlers, leaving Russell Westbrook open in the corner. Westbrook adjusted to that in the fourth quarter by taking advantage of that, cutting the backdoor a bunch, especially on, it was the Harden and Zubac double team, or pick and rolls, I should say. Westbrook was getting backdoor. He got a couple layups. He grabbed a few offensive rebounds that were big for them. And I mean, it's just good to see Westbrook, contribute any way that he can. He's not typically going to be a closing minutes guy, I don't think, for this Clippers team. And it's interesting because the Clippers like to play a lot of this small ball. It's sort of been one of their things for the past few years. And Westbrook eliminates a little bit of the benefits of it because the idea is you want to be able to space out the other team and run. Russell Westbrook can run. He cannot really space out other defenses. So that's what was going on in this Warriors game, but he ends up making plays down the stretch. And it wasn't just him because, again, how I got into this is the fact that they were sending a lot of doubles at Paul George, at Harden, running the pick and roll with Zubac, and as a result, they were leaving guys open in the corner. Norman Powell in particular, he had 12 in the fourth, and he was just knocking down threes from both corners. There was one really bad just lapse on the part of Curry to, it's not that he was doubling, he just got caught ball watching a little bit. And when the pass swings over to Powell, he doesn't step up enough. He gives him too much room, and that sort of ignited his run where he hit, it was maybe 3 straight possessions with 3-pointers. He hit 2 in the left, he hits 1 in the right, and then it was Amir Coffey hitting that last 3 in the right corner as well that really put them out of contention for this one. It was Coffey, yeah. Off of a very impressive Westbrook drive, I might add, where he had the amount of distance he covered on his Euro step before kicking out to the corner for Coffey was pretty wild. And Coffey hits that shot. Coffey also grabs an offensive rebound that really sealed the game. There was a very interesting moment with Klay Thompson. Obviously, a big subplot of this Warriors team this season has been Klay Thompson sort of coming into his understanding of what kind of role he needs to hold going forward for this Warriors team, because he's clearly not the same version of himself. He was on the bench for a good stretch of those last few minutes. He ends up getting subbed in with 48 seconds left, and after a very clutch Brandon Pajemski 3 to cut the lead to 3 points with about 50 or so seconds left, Klay intentionally fouls immediately. Westbrook goes to the line, goes 2 for 2, and again, it was the Coffey rebound that ultimately ended the game for them, but a really rough mental lapse there for Klay, who he's been in the moment so many times. I feel like he's just mentally a little bit disrupted based off of, coming to terms with not always going to be on the floor in the closing minutes. I got to be on my A game and putting a lot of pressure mentally on himself in those moments. And I think that it just sort of led to a lapse with him last night, and definitely not the reason why they lost. I mean, he was cold for the floor from a lot of the game. He started heating up a little bit late in the third, early in the fourth, but again, a pretty unspectacular game for him. And, it's just something that continuing to watch here, and it's a little bit sad, it's everybody has to deal with their own mortality in some ways. And I know that it's just a game and a sport to a lot of people, but this has been Klay's livelihood for his entire life, and there is an adjustment that needs to be done. And I think that, he is working his way into it, but, that takes time. And I've talked about this Warriors team in the past. I just don't think they have what it takes really to make that championship push. So I guess we'll leave it with that with the Warriors. Big game for the Clippers to come back and pull this out, especially without Kawhi. And again, I think that the different types of layups and everything, or lineups, I should say, are a very interesting sort of subplot for me going forward watching this team. We know how good their offense can be. I mean, last night, what did they end up scoring? 130, I think it was. And this is, again, without their best offensive player, really. I know that Harden is the initiator for them, but the efficiency that Kawhi's been playing with this year, and you look at, they double Paul George tonight, or last night, I should say, because there's no Kawhi, and Kawhi is the one who really gets those double team looks. I'd have to look up the, percentage of possessions that he gets doubled on, but it's a lot. This is a big win for them to have. So I guess that's my thoughts there on that game. The other one that really stuck out to me was the Kings versus the Nuggets. I've been very, very intrigued with the Western Conference this year. I think that it's just so deep, and it's so interesting to see sort of how this all plays out. But the Kings came off of a bad loss the other night that sort of hurt them a little bit. And they come and they play the Nuggets. The other night was the loss to the Suns, where they sort of gave that one away late. But coming into this Nuggets game, there's no Jamal Murray on the other side. So very limited lineups on the Nuggets side. You had guys like Colin Gillespie and Peyton Watson playing a lot of fourth quarter minutes for them, which is, Peyton Watson's been getting a lot of minutes this year, period. But not necessarily. I felt like Gillespie, especially down the stretch in those big moments, didn't really know where to go off ball himself. But really, it was De'Aaron Fox just taking over down the stretch. He went on a personal 6-0 run at one point, and the defensive awareness and IQ wasn't really there for Denver, and Fox was just taking advantage in that pick and roll game. He was playing well on defense. We saw him the other night too. I mean, he just works so hard. He had that poke against Durant late in the game on Tuesday where he just came from behind, poked it out, led to the transition bucket for them late in that game. He stripped it from Reggie Jackson in this game, got himself an easy transition dunk, and he just took over down the stretch for this Kings team that I don't have probably a ton of faith in when it comes to the playoffs, but I just feel like I have so much fun watching Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox play basketball. I mean, they are so good. I'll say it again. I think it's crazy that neither one of them are an all-star based off of the types of seasons that they're having, but you get Sabonis with another triple-double in this game. I think it was either this game or the Phoenix game he had it in the third quarter. I mean, he is just ridiculous. And, for the Nuggets, I don't really worry about too much of any of their individual games, game by game. I know they were blown out by the Bucks the other night. They lose tonight to the Kings here. I think it's more so you just have to have faith in the infrastructure of that team and that they are going to come out in the big moments. Again, no Jamal Murray even for this game, but they are definitely a little bit dealing with depth issues, and that's why they're playing the Gillespies, the Watsons. Holiday was in for them as well. One of the Holiday brothers. Was it Justin Holiday? I always forget because Justin, the Holiday that is on the Rockets lately has actually been incredible knocking down big shots, and Justin Holiday is the one on the Nuggets, which means Aaron Holiday, I think, is the one that plays for the Rockets, and the Rockets end up losing that game last night as well to the Grizzlies, who I love watching the Grizzlies. I really do. Unironically, I know they're not good, but this team fights so hard, and I'm a very big Vince Williams fan, actually. That has sort of been a development for myself over the course of this season, but the way that they just sort of deal with all the adversity, all the injuries that they've dealt with, and they got some young players that have really been stepping up for them. Again, Vince Williams, I mentioned, who I think started the year on a 2-way contract. G.G. Jackson was spectacular for them last night. So we are just about out of time here, but I do want to quickly give a shout out to Denny Avdia. The Wizards are the worst team in the NBA and the worst future, in my opinion. I think that they really struggle with any cornerstones. Now, honestly, a little bit of encouraging Kyle Kuzma quotes over the past couple days in terms of wanting to stay there, not worrying about getting his individual points, but trying to do the other stuff. I like Kuzma as a player too, but as far as, young pieces to build around, I didn't really think they had a real guy there. But Denny Avdia explodes for a career high 41, I think it was last night, and I've been really impressed with him this season as a whole. It was 43 actually. His previous high was 25, and Zion after the game, because they played the Pelicans in this one, gave Avdia props for not just the scoring but his two-way ability, and I think that is sort of what stuck out to me. He's been a very good defender for the past few years. He's out of Israel. He was a lottery pick a few years ago, and the offense wasn't really there, but there was always that effort and defensive presence, and he was really, really impressive in this game. He was very much exhausted by the end of it, again, because he's a two-way guy, and he was pretty much the sole reason, maybe I shouldn't say sole, but the Wizards were down by 20 points, and they ended up making it at least a game in the fourth quarter. They come short. Avdia can't fully get his legs under him to finish the job, but if you're a Wizards fan, you don't have all that much to be excited about. I would genuinely be excited about Denny Avdia. I think he's becoming a really good player for a team that has been incredibly disappointing over the past few seasons. So that is all I have for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. We will be back tomorrow, same time, 2 o'clock. So thank you all for tuning in, and just a reminder to like and follow. See you tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.